Is there going to be an opportunity for the public to make comments before the City Council on the approval or disapproval of the proposed ordinance?
I'll answer that one.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, as a former member of City Council, yes. I'm not sure if it's set for a time certain, Jim. Do you know?
Yes.
Anybody? Mary?
No, it's not time certain, but it is, there are 2 readings.
Right. First reading is this Thursday, and the meeting starts at 9 in the morning. Since
Number
it,
7 on the agenda.
Right.
So probably be 9:30.
Mary's suggesting if you want to speak on it, get there about 9:30, and you have 3 minutes as an opportunity to speak for or against the ordinance.
It's not, oh no, it's a public hearing.
Well, it's a public hearing because it's it's scheduled for first reading. So, okay, good question. Thank you. And then second reading is probably going to be scheduled for 2 weeks after that, also on a Thursday morning. Can I scooch through here?
Speak loudly. Mr. Shimberg, can you tell us about the process used by the city to review and validate the legality and the constitutionality of the proposed ordinance? Your office's review, how it was conducted? Thank you.
It was conducted by legal research, reviewing other ordinances, reading the cases, trying to come up with what we think is appropriate in this circumstance, subject to the public comment and City Council hearings that will be coming forward.
Did your office draft it?
Yes, sir.
Sean?
Julie, I want to go back to the issue of the banning or exiling of arrestees. Have you had the opportunity to meet with the judges, you and Mark, to talk about a standard bond schedule for the kinds of offenses that people might be arrested for that are less common on a day-to-day basis? I'm going back to February of 1989 when we had the disturbances in College Hill. There was a group then, the Uhurus, who led demonstrations there, and everybody who was arrested for incitement to riot or affray, which are not really common offenses. And everybody who was arrested for those offenses as a condition of their bond release was banned and exiled from the College Hill neighborhood, including people who had families there and couldn't go home. A group of lawyers got together with Mark's office and ultimately persuaded the state attorney to lift the request for that exile on those bonds because it was unconstitutional. But because of the clean zone being as large an area as it is, including my house in Hyde Park and, like Mr. Robinson said, the hood, I'm concerned that there should be a standard bond schedule addressing those types of offenses that clearly in advance, unless there are exceptional circumstances, precludes the court from imposing a banning of going back to the clean zone so that people can continue their First Amendment rights.
Obviously, when the Occupy incident started, we realized that there was a little bit of a problem in the understanding of how people were being arrested and why there were certain conditions that were being imposed on them, and we had to meet with Judge Heinrich on that. It's my anticipation that we will know shortly who the judges are that are volunteering to handle the special court, if we decide to have the special court. And after we do that, and after we know the exact ordinance that is going to be in place, then we will be in a position to try and have a meeting where we can discuss the process of how people will be booked. Is it going to be remote or is it going to be at one of the facilities? What is the booking process going to look like if it's remote? Because that's apparently under contention, and I've had a lot of phone calls from people that are concerned about how that's going to occur. The standard bond that's in place right now there's not an intention right now to modify it. So if there's an arrest for a battery on a law enforcement officer, as you know, that's a minimum of probably a $5,000 bond or some amount like that. If there is something thrown at an officer, as you know, that can go, the range of charges can go really high and very differential. So what we have to do is really just wait until we know who the judges are that are going to be in place, because that will give me a historical basis for how they handle first appearance. Well, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and not tell you the truth. You have to figure out who your judges are. Shelley will tell you. You have to know your judges. You have to know what their history is with first appearance. We do it every day, 365 days a year, so I know who puts a $50,000 bond on a domestic violence and who puts a $200 bond on a domestic violence. And we'll be prepared for those types of things. And we will go to the table with everyone to try and determine whether or not there are some unique charges that have not been considered in the past where we have to perhaps readdress things. The exile issue is something that's happening all the time right now. We're dealing with it. We started dealing with it in the new prostitution that just came up. They were saying to people, you're arrested for prostitution, you can't go back to where you were arrested from. Well, they were arrested at their home. We'll have to deal with that. So we're very, very aware of that. My fear, and I'm not going to in any way dissuade you of this fear, is that I won't be able to move writs, emergency writs, fast enough. That, as you know, is the challenge. But if we can get the DCA to agree to do the emergency writs in about a 24-hour to 48, that doesn't appease you if you're here for 5 days. But that's about as fast as I can move. I don't know that I can move faster. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to take 2 more questions, and then some people look like they want to go eat some dinner or something. Ari?
Hi, my question is directed to the city attorney, and as someone who may have to resort to riding a bike to work to allow people who have to drive the ability to do it, I was directed to the prohibited items in the clean zone, and it seems to include, without limitation, bicycle locks. There does seem, I can't tell because it's kind of a run-on sentence there, but sorry, but it does appear to have some exclusion from that, and I just wasn't sure because my bicycle lock isn't attached to my bike unless it's actually locked to something. So, will I be able to do that?
No, it's on.
We'll take a look at that issue.
Okay. I didn't want to favor this side. Is anybody on that side? Okay. What did I say? 2 more and that's it. Here we go.
Much that I've heard tonight has been good news, but I'm concerned knowing that additional police officers from other jurisdictions are going to be hired and the National Guard is going to be here and other things like this. Can anybody say what kinds of additional training is being done to prepare the police authorities for dealing with the tsunami of protesters that are coming?
Jim, why don't you give that to Kirby?
Kirby?
There you go. Introduce yourself if you will. Hi, I'm the aforementioned Kirby. My last name is Rainsberger. I'm the legal advisor at the police department, and I've been there for about 20 years. And let me start by saying I'm a little disconcerted by the general atmosphere in here that suggests that the police officers are maybe the enemy of the First Amendment. And I assure you that they are not. And the Tampa Police Department in particular, we go to great lengths to train the police officers that their obligation is to uphold the Constitution. Sometimes that means different things to different people, and you've seen it up here. But the officers, I assure you, are there exceptions? Yeah, there are exceptions, and you read about them in the newspaper. But for the vast majority of the police officers, they understand the limitations on their power. They understand that the First Amendment is critical to this country's success and survival, and they support it. When you talk about the training, and I'll get to that now, there is a tremendous amount of training that's going to go on. Not only face-to-face type of training, we're creating a video to train outside police officers. We are intending to train not only in the defensive things that you're going to read about in the newspaper, and the purchase of the turtle gear and the riot gear and all that kind of stuff, but we are also going to train our people and all the incoming police officers about our philosophy on the First Amendment and its importance in this scenario. So all these police officers, all the National Guard personnel are going to understand, and they're going to have it in their hand, not only what the ordinance talks about, but also the fundamental, you're not going to deprive people of their First Amendment rights. So don't take to the street, those of you who plan to do that, thinking that the officers are your enemy. They are not. We intend to facilitate, to the extent that you will let us, to the extent that the protesters will let us, we intend to facilitate your right to protest, to get your message across, if you will let us. People who come here and intend to burn the city and burn police cars and attack police officers, those people we're going to have to deal with in a different fashion. But if you come here to get a message across, to exercise your First Amendment rights, we are 100% on your side, and we will facilitate that in any way that we can. Thank you.